to everybody. This is the first time I've attended the FITCE conference, and I'm very glad to stay here and to show you this Fondazione Ugo Bordoni project that represents the first example in Europe to give to end user the possibility to measure its own quality of service. So here is summarized what we want to show you. First of all, I'm talking about some project and regulatory aspects of the resolution that allow us to develop this project. In particular, we have a fast look on the main aspect and technical aspect. I'll show you a novel architecture that we developed on the whole national country, and the end user measurements and first results be obtained with the software Nemesis, which are the aims of the resolution number 244. This resolution is based on two fundamental pillars. The first one we call ISP measurements, or advertised values, is a number of measures that can help consumers in understanding it more on broadband service they are going to buy. So Italian operators must publish some values that can be compared to each other, and any consumers can look at this and choose which is the operator that want to have a contract to. And user measurements are provided by means of the software, and this is a revolutionary point because of any user can evaluate its own fixed line quality of service, and results could be compared with ISP promised ones. So, as we will see, you can receive the contract without penalties if you demonstrate that values you can compute are worse than promised one. Okay, which are operation duties. Operator must publish Carta dei Servizi. This is a document that contains all the main principles that service offered must comply with, and in particular, minimum requirements in terms of quality of service are provided. Operator must periodically transmit this data to Italian National Regulation Agency, AGCOM, and publish this on their websites. So they are obliged to communicate the technology used for the access, for example, ADSL2+, or optical fiber, and to write which are the minimum characteristics that consumers, CPE, must have in order to fully exploit the Internet access contract. Which are consumer rights. Because of operators buying themselves to observe values indicated within Carta dei Servizi, a single user, if finds values worse than promised one, can claim QoS level restored. And if these levels are not restored within 30 days from the complaint, they have the right to receive without penalties from the contract. This is the first time in Europe in which a single user has the possibility to do it. And each consumer can formally certify the quality of his own fixed line by means of the software we call it Nemesis. It stands for Network Measurement System, that is completely developed in Fondazione Ugo Bordoni. Fondazione Ugo Bordoni manages all the project I'm showing you. This is the measure architecture. We have three main actors when we talk about end-user quality of service. First of all, we should define what quality of service is. Anyway, this is another matter that I want to discuss later. So the difference between this measure architecture, and other ones that you can find with web surfing, for example, speedtest.net, is the position of the measurement server. The measurement server is located within an internet exchange point. In Italy we also call it neutral access point. And an internet exchange point is a physical network, is an hardware, is a switch that connects all participating internet service providers. So through this physical infrastructure, each ISP exchanges traffic, internet traffic, between the networks without third-party networks. So we can assure that each client measures only performances related to its own ISP networks. And this approach allows for a comparable and reproducible results. What we measure, which are QoS parameters that we consider. Essentially, we consider the throughput. So as you can see, we look at data transmission speed and packet delay. Nowadays, there is a sort of overlapping between quality of experience and quality of service. It is very hard to distinguish the limits of the two aspects of the quality. To define these parameters, there was a very hard discussion between operators, our NRA, and Fondazione Ugo Bordoni. And the results is that when we talk about internet touches, we have to talk about TCP. So by means of transmission control protocol, we actually measure a TCP stream and TCP performances. So I talk about throughput because the TCP mechanism is affected by delay, and the throughput reduces according to the delay. We measure delay by means of ICMP, so with a ping command, half the time expressed in millisecond of the ping command. And the data transmission speed is achieved separately for downloading and uploading specified file tests between the remote servers located within the internet exchange point and an end user computer. We collect all these samples and then we compute the percentile. In particular, the most important value is the 5th percentile, because when we talk about ISP measurements, these values constitute the value that they have to advertise on TV and on the radio, for example. So when you are advertising a new profile that you want to sell to consumers, you cannot say up to 10 megabit per second, for example, but you have to write which is the real bandwidth Fondazione Ugo Bordoni measured. This is my proud. This is the network that we deployed on the whole Italian country. So the yellow square and the red flags represents government buildings that are arranged by Fondazione Ugo Bordoni. Each operator, each Italian operator that has more than 3,000 users must bring within these government buildings the 2 most sold ADSL connections. So more or less we have 30 lines for each governmental building, and then we publish the values we collect. This is the way we arrange what we call probe rooms, and in also to have comparison between internet service provider performance, we have the same line attenuation. In particular, distance, the medium distance in Italy between a consumer and the exchange point, the central office, is about 1 kilometer, 1.2 kilometer. The line attenuation is 11 dB. So if our government building is closer than 1 kilometer to the exchange, we can arrange a sort of loop between the cabinet and the line termination to reach the 11 dB value of attenuation. And if the government building is too far, we simply decide to choose another building. These are results we published. In particular, the 50th percentile is computed on the whole national samples. Instead, other values, for example, standard deviation and mean values are represented just for local analysis. So, for example, in Regione Lazio, we'll have in Italy, near Rome, we'll have also all values we computed, but we just calculate the 50th percentile on the whole country. It represents the minimum bandwidth in terms on what we mean quality of service is. For example, FastWeb, that is one of the most Italian operator, we cannot see the value. Anyway, it's more or less 10 megabit per second for an optical fiber connection. What is interesting to observe is that these are values we discover when we make ISP measurements. In particular, when we talk about B-stream and local loop unbundling measure, we can observe that results are very different. We know that other licensed operator or alternative operator can connect to the incumbent to particular points called interconnection points. So they pay for bit. And they could have they could adopt some of overbooking strategies, and you can see it in the busy hour of the day. Anyway, another problem could be described by looking at this line. That, for example, may be that incumbent does not guarantee quality of service. And if you talk with other licensed operators, they said this, that quality of service is not guaranteed by the incumbent. We don't want to know which is the reason, but we just show you which are results. Okay, you have results obtained by means of ISP measurements. So in the contract, you have the value of the promised bandwidth. You want to be sure that your line is compliant with the bandwidth that your operator promised to you. So you can have your own measure by using this software. This is a free software. You can download it from misurainternet.it. Obviously, registration is needed. This is a cross-platform software. So it runs on the Windows XP, Vista 7, Mac OS X, and so on, Linux. And of course, before starting measures, the software checks the CPA write environment. For example, you have to measure if you are directly connected to your modem by means of a UTP cable. For example, wireless measurements are not allowed because of cryptography. And another important point is measures endures 24 hours. Because we give a sort of document that is an official document to the end user to obtain a significant number of samples that allow to well characterize the fixed line under test, we execute at least 50 tests per hour. So we have a huge number of samples. And these are first results we obtained. Up to now, we have, you can look at the misurainternet.it and the number of users that are going to have measured is online. Up to now, we have 4,000 users that has complete all the line characterization. So they made a 24 hours measure. This is the distribution of the users, and this is results we obtained. We know that this is not a significant statistics. I think that we need more or less 20,000 users to have a significant statistic. Anyway, a trend can be depicted. And as you can see, the actual speed we measure is half the headline speed one. So this is a real data, not the advertised one by operators. So in conclusions, collecting the huge number of users, it became possible to create a detailed Italian actual speed map, like this, for example, that is very rude. Anyway, they give us an idea which is the speed we could enjoy in any different place of Italy. We can exactly identify digital device areas and suggest alternative solution because we can identify it. We simply identify it. And we can stimulate, of course, competition between internet service providers. So that's all.